Hello, welcome to Directly Used episode 209. I cleared it with Parker. I am AJ. I'm of Redirect. I'm joined by Parker, also of Redirect. And we're collectively joined by Kevin Kenton. We're going to talk about JRPG. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm excited to talk about JRPGs. You introed me right at the right time for a train to go by. I don't know if that's getting picked up.
I didn't hear any of that, so I'm going to assume that they didn't hear it either.
Beautiful.
But yeah, you can support this show and all that stuff by going to youtube.com/watchredirect or twitch.tv/watchredirect and give $4.99. It don't even got to be yours. It could be Jeff B's. It could be Jeff Bezos's if you're on Twitch and you have Amazon Prime. You could link it to your Twitch account. You get a free subscription. You just got to remember to renew it. You get emotes, you get freaking free Switch keys from time to time. Guys, our supporters all in the Discord. We record this show and get to be a part of the peanut gallery and get to hear all the, behind the baseball stuff and inside baseball. I don't know how to talk. I've been talking for 2 hours already. Anyway, we're talking about RPGs and whatnot. And I just want to hear Kevin Kenton gush about live, alive, live alive, live live, love. So that's what we're going to do today.
Yep. Live, Live, Love. That's the official title, actually.
So what's up? Tell me all the things about the game. What do I need to know?
Frickin', it's awesome. I mean, where do we even start? It's an awesome game. So I know between the two of you, Parker, you're more into like RPGs and stuff, right?
Yeah, I've played, and so far I plan to play the full game. I've only played the demo thus far, but I've also, listened to a good deal of conversation around the game, so I'm a little bit more familiar with it than just the demo, but not that much, probably. Okay. So yeah, excited to, find out a whole bunch of things about it. But yes.
Cool. Well, I guess just to kind of start with my background with it is, Live Live is a remake, but it's of a game that never officially came out in the West. And way back in the day, I did play the fan translation that just, made its way around the internet. And that was like in my teenage years. So I played this a long time ago, the original version. And I don't know if anyone's who's listening or watches my channel. When there was the Nintendo Direct that announced it, I did a little reaction video, and I absolutely lost my mind because it's this game that came out back in '94. It didn't even do that great in Japan when it released. Never came to the West, and I figured that would be the end of the story for that game. It didn't make the right waves. So hearing it get a remake, not just a port and a translation, but a full blown remake in 22 is. It broke my mind that day.
Yeah.
When you first played it back
voice acted and stuff like that too?
No. So the voice acting, that's one of the things they added in the remake. I think I did have maybe like quick little, maybe some battle animation sounds for characters.
That's
like quick
what
little
I mean,
lines.
though. I mean, is the remake like the first time that they voice acted this game?
I believe so. There might have been some minor sound bites they didn't reuse from combat because it's been a while since I played the original SNES one. And I don't recall that being a thing. But yeah, the voice acting, that's all new. Obviously, the HD 2D aesthetic, that's completely new. Outside of that, though, the game is very faithful to the original. I mean, obviously, there's differences between this one and the fan translation because that was a fan translation, and this is like the official one they're doing. So, there's some differences there. But I mean, they've kept intact lots of stuff I didn't expect them to. I mean, there's so many weird little silly things that, I think there was more experimentation with that kind of stuff back in the 90s with, just trying to make different new games. And I thought would get, messed with a little more here. But it really is like a faithful recreation of the title, which I am so happy with.
Yeah. What was, so back in the day when you played it in high school, what was your exposure to it then? Or how'd you find out about it in the first place? Because, I mean, now it's coming out. It's in Walmart probably somewhere. And so someone can just walk up and pick it up and buy it. And that's easy enough. But at that time, finding out about games that you wouldn't otherwise know about is a little harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I cannot tell you how exactly I discovered it. No, it was one of those situations where I was really into RPGs and I was playing a bunch of stuff. And I think at some point I just kind of had the thought to look for stuff that didn't come to us but had fan translations. And I mean, this was a time in my life where I discovered and got into Seiken Densetsu 3, which we now know as Trials of Mana. I mean, Square has a bunch of JRPGs that just didn't come over here on the SNES. I always messed up the name a little bit, but Treasure of the Rudras or Treasures of the Rudra, Bahamut Lagoon. And so Live Alive is just one of those games that I discovered, which back then I called Live Alive, and I called it that until we got that trailer at Nintendo where I went, I've been doing it wrong this whole time? Okay,
See, that's
great,
the thing
love
that
it,
I was trying
love
to
it.
figure out. Like, I was like, did anybody know this? Like, what it was called? Because, like,
No idea.
I'm still never sure. I'm never sure. Like, we've said it multiple times during this, and I still don't know. Like, it still hasn't been like internalized for me. That's why I just like to keep it safe. I say everything, dude. I say live live, live and live,
have all your bases covered.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like Legends Arceus, where it seems like they had an opportunity to like make a firm decision, and they're like, we're just going to land on this thing, because otherwise they could have totally, like, if it was never localized in the first place and it was just in Japanese, then, because in Japanese I'd guess it was it called, like, I mean, just a Japanese pronunciation of the words Live Alive, or is there like a specifically Japanese name for it?
I actually don't know off the top of my head. I mean, I believe it was just called Live Alive was the way it was always translated, because, I mean, we didn't have an English translation. So it's not like they, it's not like people came up. I believe the title was actually in English, Live Alive, was done that way. Because I think that's even what the title screen shows in the Japanese version.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember what I was going to say before, but I mean, it's just cool that it's come out. And like something about games that haven't been localized, or like remastering games, bringing games back up, it makes me think too of like, there's something to be said for just going back to old gems and then kind of polishing them up and then bringing them forward, so that you can like there's the historicity behind it, that you can just, have a way to keep playing that game. But also, like, I'll find old songs of mine that I wrote forever ago, and I'm like, I never really did anything with that, and that's such an easy win to just record it now, and then it's like, that's now it's a song, as if I wrote it yesterday, but I didn't. And I feel like there's something to be said for just like, at this point, that's a good way too to like test out art styles. Not that they did with this one, because obviously they, that already happened with Octopath and all that. But I don't know, just like bringing all these games back up, but in faithful and like interesting ways is just really neat. And especially seeing Seiken Densetsu 3, Seiken Densetsu 3 coming as Trials, and then also as in the like the collection, and having that, and having the two different ways to play it, like those kinds of things. I don't know, it's just fun. Like, I, especially after all this time where like Square sometimes would bring things forward, but there just wasn't as much of a market for it seemed like, for a long time. And so now that there finally is, they're just like going ham.
I don't know,
really
what,
cool.
I don't know what sparked that like inspiration, because I feel like for a long time, right? I mean, you'd get the occasional thing that was maybe directly ported as a digital release. You saw that happen with a few things on like PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 3. They would have like the PS1 classics, and so you saw some of those games crop up there. And some big name stuff, got remade or ported later on, like Final Fantasy VII. But absolutely, I mean, something, I want to say it was probably about 2018 is really when we started to see an uptick in this stuff. Because if you had told me, like before the Switch launch, that we would be seeing current ports and remakes of Trials of Mana, Live Alive, a finished version of Saga Frontier, which restored cut content. I mean, there's so much stuff that I never even remotely would have believed would actually be a priority for Square to do. And here we are, where we're almost at this point where it's like, when we talk about other games that haven't been translated yet, it doesn't feel like anything's really off the table. It's like, if Live Alive of all things got an HD 2D remake, what else could they end up tapping into now? We already know a couple of things coming out, like Front Mission 1 and 2 are getting remade. That was supposed to be a summer release, but I don't think we've really heard an update since that Nintendo Direct. There's just so much stuff that could be tapped into at this point, and it all feels possible, which is wild.
Yeah.
It feels like, to
And
me,
especially-
like
sorry, go
it's a domino effect of like with the Switches, right? Because like even me, right? Again, not an RPG fan in the slightest, but there's RPGs that I'm like, yo, I could play this on the Switch. Like if I'm not gonna want to commit the whole thing of like being at my setup and having the Switch dock and stuff like that. But like if I'm just looking for something low impact to play, like I'll play that on handheld mode. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that them coming out with new like Octopath Traveler, right? And then they saw that succeeded, and they're like, oh well, if we can use our older catalog and make it look like that, we have part of the like gaming historians and people that have always wanted to experience this game but couldn't before, that can help with the groundswell, but also the people that are just experiencing it as a new thing that looks like a thing that's new in terms of like when it actually released, and it's just this whole like new thing that already we know is good because people played the original thing and like it, you know what I mean? Like I think that's a big part of it too.
Yeah, but that's also what's wild about Live Alive, right? Is like it didn't even do great. Like I think it the Japan release was like something like I don't remember the number off the top of my head. For some reason, I want to say it was either 270,000 or maybe 470,000. Like it didn't even break $500,000.
Was it
and, like,
received well? Is what I mean. Like,
yeah, I would say. I mean, I don't have like review scores in front of me from back in the day, but I think it probably got something like 7 8s or something back at the time. Like Famitsu probably gave it like a 32, 33, something like that. It was one of those things where like at its time, it was kind of a curiosity because it's such an experimental game compared to a lot of other stuff that came out around that time, right? I mean, not too long after was the release of Chrono Trigger. You had Final Fantasy games coming out. I mean, FF4 was this big step in narrative for RPGs at the time, which was before Live Alive. And so there were these more polished games that I think it kind of got compared to when it was this kind of weirder thing. And now, in retrospect, I think there's more appreciation for those kind of weirder experimental titles, right? Because we've now seen what the kind of polished traditional RPG can look like. Here's something a little different from that, you know? And that's one of the things that I think really stands out about it. I mean, I'm working on a review right now that I'm planning to put live tomorrow morning. And one of the main things I talk about is, you know, when I was working on when I was playing the game, I really thought that I might have this moment of like, oh, you know, I have a lot of nostalgia for when I played this in my teens, but like, what if it didn't really hold up now that I'm going to play it now? And I think I actually like it more now than I did before.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, like, especially because it sounds like it's a game that really is story heavy in a cool way where like, honestly, I mean, we talk about this pretty often here. We're like, games don't really do story that well pretty often.
Ultimately, right.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, even the games with the best stories, it you know, it depends for sure. But more often than not, it's just not done super, super well. Whereas this one having like manga artists or like manga writers and anime writers and stuff.
Get them off of my show.
Hey,
I heard it.
sometimes
I want to say it.
but having them like come in and write stuff from, you know, outside, that it's not just like Miyamoto trying to cobble together a story because he's great at game design, but like doesn't necessarily know anything about story sometimes. You know, it's people that actually know what they're doing and do interesting things where it's like taking tropes and then reworking them, and that's cool. It does seem like the one thing that I'd heard about the reviews at the time was visually, compared to some of the other its contemporaries, it wasn't like quite as ambitious in, I mean, probably just the fact that there's so many scenarios and it can't really reuse assets. So it like had to be pared down in a way that like, it's like Kanto in Gen 2, where you go back and it's like, are you sure this is Kanto? This is Viridian Forest. Like, what's going on here?
Truncated version. It's like how like Spider-Man PS4 just removed like Midtown. Like,
right. So like some of that, whereas now it's like legitimately beautiful. Like it looks so good. So it's great to like finally see that vision realized as well, because the areas, obviously, like the ideas behind them were great, but like sometimes maybe just more sparse than they ideally would have wanted to be if they had just more resources to work with or whatever. And then the other thing,
absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna absolutely, like, that is, you know, I you know, I'm not looking at like side by side shots or anything right now, but absolutely, like the original release was not like the best looking SNES RPG, and the HD 2D facelift really put in the work here. Yeah. The music, on the other hand, that was great back then and has aged incredibly well. I don't know if that's what you're going to segue to, but the music in this game is so good.
No, yeah. I mean, the bits that I've heard so far are really good, so I'm looking forward to hearing more of it as well. I think
Yeah,
as far as like us talking earlier about like the popularity of these kinds of things and them doing well, because like not just Square is doing it, but like Nintendo's doing it a bunch now too, with like Advanced Wars and all sorts of things. I think honestly the fact that the retro market is just so oppressive and like impossible to get into makes it so that these games, I mean, people can emulate stuff or whatever all they want, but as far as like if I officially want to play Advanced Wars 1 and 2, it is going to be way cheaper to just buy the new version of them as it comes out than to find the copies used and stuff like that. So all that said, like I think there is something to be said for like there's so much history in games, and it's not like, I don't know, probably 20 years ago when you'd say there was history in games, the experience of playing like Zelda 1 for the history behind it and like the understanding of where it came from, as opposed to playing A Link to the Past or like some games that have learned more lessons and stuff like that, is long story short, there's retro games that are better now because they're, they came from later in generations and stuff than retro games, all the way at the beginning,
right?
On the NES.
It's like
and stuff.
how like a lot of SNES games feel like it was akin to like Celeste now, where like people that's just a new game that comes out and people like it and they play it because it's a game that's just good. There's no asterisk.
Yeah, right.
There's no like, of its time. It's just a good game. Period.
Exactly. It helps a lot that visual style, I think, is aged really well, right? Like, you're not seeing a lot of people try to recreate PS1 style visuals in games. I mean, it does happen. There are those love letters that do that. But there's a lot more that is focused on the kind of more NES to SNES times. And that's exactly what it is, right? Like there are situations now where a game like Chrono Trigger, right? Like you could see someone trying to make something like that today with that visual style and be that kind of thing. And so being able to tap into this older market, and that's the big thing for me too, is that availability. I mean, back when there was talk of closing the PS3 and Vita store, I was stomping my foot at the time because there's so much great stuff that is so much cheaper to get on there. Like I love recommending people to check out stuff like, say, Suikoden, and it's like it's like $6 on the PlayStation Store at the time, and if you want to track down a physical copy, it's like 200 something. Just like that's a little different accessibility there. And there's always that argument of like, oh, we'll just emulate. And it's like that's cool and all, but a lot of people aren't necessarily going to take those steps. And when I can just say like, oh yeah, look at the store, look up this game, here it is, that's just so much easier.
Right.
It's a lot more accessible for a lot more people.
Yeah. There's definitely, like, we talk about that a fair amount, and like for me, the side of it that I have more experience with, because I'm not really the type to like go back and play something, is just people being mad for the sake of being mad a lot of the times on the internet. Like, I completely empathize with people like you that want to experience these games, and they're like upset about that becoming harder, but it becomes like hard to navigate when there's so many people on the internet that see a hot topic to be angry at Nintendo or whatever company, and they use that as just another nail in the coffin. Like last week I was mad because they told me I can't play Smash Brothers Melee, and now I'm mad because it's like just the topic of the week. It ends.
Yeah, I mean, like negativity and outrage is always going to be something that's fueled on the internet, right? And and that's the thing with conversations, is that like you have to be able to cut through that line with people of okay, like you don't like this thing, but let's like talk about it like calmly, like not just it's not just like I'm gonna boycott everything. There's a balance between them.
There's obviously legitimacy there of like, no, like I want to experience these games, but there's a lot of in between there, from like, I want to experience these games and I think that's fair, from like, you're literally oppressing me because you won't let me easily purchase The Legend of Zelda 2. It's like,
right.
And then, like,
by the way, random thought I was going to throw out. I love how we've talked about Live Alive quite a bit, and we haven't actually explained anything of what it actually is as a game. Like, I've talked about it in a general sense, but not like what it is.
So what is it?
Yeah, so it's very experimental RPG from originally '94. The thing that I've seen a lot of people kind of mix up when they first saw the trailer and everything is like, oh, so this is like Octopath, right? And it's really not, like, at all. Because the whole shtick is, here's 7 different characters to choose from, but they're all their own isolated little stories and chapters. And it's really weird because I don't like talking too in depth about what all the gameplay entails, because I really think this is one of those games where, like, it's better to just go in,
right?
Just like let it wash over you, just like see what happens, because it really messes a lot with sort of the assumption of like what a JRPG is. Like every chapter has their own little gimmicks. There's all this kind of like, it's very playful, and that at the same time is
Undertale and Earthbound in those kinds of ways, I feel like, which is, I don't know, just really neat.
Well, absolutely. In fact, I mean, Live Alive is one of the games that influenced Undertale. The main boss theme in Live Alive is called Megalomania, and Megalovania is based on that. It's not like a remix or a rip or anything, but it's like when you hear them side by side, you're like, oh, I can see how this inspired this. Like it's very clear. Like it is one of the games absolutely that influenced Undertale's design, because it is that kind of game. And the kind of flip side of that is that if you're looking for a more kind of traditional, oh, I want to build up and level up my party and kind of a normal JRPG, it's really not that. But I mean, if you're kind of more down for
even in just the ones that you play in the demo, the like Far Future and the Imperial China and Shinobi, like the Shinobi one can be. I learned
it
very
feels
quickly,
a little
it's like,
bit.
maybe you shouldn't. But then some of the other ones, like, one of them doesn't have combat at all. The other one, for the Imperial China one, your main character right at the beginning, seemingly, like you don't level up. And that's just like super interesting. Like the way that the traditional JRPG gameplay ties in with the story and just like changes how it uses that kind of gameplay based on the story is, I don't know, just super cool. And literally just the one chapter or the 3 opening chapters that you get to play.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's part of the experimental fun of the game. I think this is one of those games where, like, if you've played a lot of JRPGs, you, especially like kind of stock ones, you appreciate this game all the more because it really does mess with that concept a lot. And again, like if you're looking for just a traditional, like, oh, I just want level up my guys, it's really not that. And it actually has a lot of its weaknesses, I would say, are in that regard. Like the combat system is interesting, but it's never really like a graceful challenge difficulty that like increases. Like you're gonna have random difficulty spikes sometimes, and most fights are relatively easy, especially if you're a little bit of a grinder, like gameplay wise. But yeah, it certainly has some weaknesses in those regards. But if you just want like a game that's this odd little gem that just messes with the concept of the genre, that's where it really shines.
Yeah.
How many hours in will it take me to get a Charizard?
So as far as the hour count, I'd be interested in your take, Kevin, because from what I've heard, it's like probably a 25-hour game, and I mean, without spoilers or whatever, there's the main criticism for Octopath was that like there are 8 stories, but they kind of barely tie together, and this one they specifically do tie together, and like I don't know. Okay, so Xeon over at Nintendo Life, I watched his review, and one of the things that, well, it doesn't matter. One of the things that he pointed out that I thought was really nice as a dad who doesn't have that much time to play games oftentimes is that like you can feel like you're making adequate actual progress in each chapter, because like each chapter is only, like maybe 2-3 hours long or something like that. I mean, maybe mileage may vary on that front. I don't know. But as opposed to 2 hours feeling, or like, playing for 30 minutes in some other games could feel like you barely did anything. Like Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I remember I've said this a lot of times, but I'd opened the game, forgot that I'd turned it off at a cutscene, and then watch the cutscene and be like, oh man, I got to do something else. And then by the time I pick the game back up, I'm still in a cutscene. And so like, I liked the game a lot, but that kind of stuff was, detrimental when you don't have much time, whereas this game seems like it's pretty kind to those of us with limited schedules.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, honestly, each of the... So, again, I don't like getting too in-depth on like how the whole structure of the game works, because I think it's better to kind of be surprised a little bit. The most general way I'll put this is that you play the 7 chapters, and then there is more, we'll just say. So the 7 chapters individually go between about... I think the shortest one maybe takes 35 to 45 minutes. That's the modern day one. It's very quick. But then even at the longest, there may be 2 hours, 2.5 if you really... The one that's kind of the wild card is the Edo, the ninja one, because it's non-linear in design. So, you know, depending on how you want to play it, it can be pretty quick, or it can actually take quite a while as you poke and prod and figure stuff out. But yeah, the longest still is like 2 to 2.5 hours. The overall game, you know, with the more at the end, adds up to about 23 to 25, depending on like how you speed through stuff. So it's a little more substantial overall. I think it actually surprises people because I've talked to a few guys who are like, oh, I just got this far. How much more do I have left? And then I tell them, they go, oh, wait, really? Like there's that. I'm only at, it's like, it's really only there. There's not, I'm not close to the end. Yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited to play the full thing whenever I get around to it, because it sounds, and also like somebody that worked on Chrono Trigger as well, right? Something like that.
I believe so. Yeah, I mean, Chrono Trigger was such a mashup of artists from like multiple teams, and I don't remember right now the full list, but that sounds entirely likely. I know one of the guys that worked on Final Fantasy IV served as part of the main crew for Live Alive.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So going back to the like bigger topic, you know, of JRPGs, general and remakes and all that kind of stuff. So like obviously we're seeing this in like Dragon Quest 3 HD. Like where is Chrono Trigger and some of these other games that like I'm just wondering, what is it, something where Square's thinking about it, we think, or like the, you know, even Final Fantasies 1 through 6, there's obviously the pixel remasters, but like are they going to do some with those? What are your thoughts on those kinds of things?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is definitely a topic I've talked to a few people about. Zion and I even did a whole chat about Chrono Trigger specifically.
Nice.
You know, I always hate to try and like get in the brains of companies, because I mean there's so much that goes on the backside there, right? Like who's making these decisions, who's even moving them up in the ladder in the first place, where, you know, what stuff's already in development that might interfere with other stuff potentially happening, because, you know, obviously there are certain resources where if you want to have a certain director or a certain lead involved with the project, if they're already involved in something else, you know, are you going to really pull them away from that to bring back whatever classic game people are asking about? Yeah, you know, I obviously, like we were talking about earlier, Square seems to be in this era right now where they're just really tapping into specifically that kind of SNES to PS1 era. You know, whether they're doing ports or remasters or remakes, they're really leaning into doing more of that right now. And so for specific titles, like stuff like Chrono Trigger, yeah, I think that's in the conversation. I think that's an absolute possibility. But where that is in the timeline, or, you know, if it really will happen, I don't know. Couldn't tell you. You know, I mean, the range of stuff they're choosing right now is just so wild between, you know, I mean, so much of the Saga franchise is now playable on modern systems. Like they've ported and remade like basically all of them at this point. There's only a couple missing, which the fact that that's been that high of a priority is, you know, just nuts. Like that's happening. And then again, you know, Live Alive, I never would have expected, because it wasn't even that big of a hit back in its day. Right. So then that leads to that question of like, well, Chrono Trigger's a huge hit, and where is that? Yeah. Maybe it's on the way, maybe not. I don't know. Couldn't tell you. Yeah. It would be cool. I'm for it. You know, I want it on stuff.
Maybe the thing for them is like, what do they think they can make a hit, and then that is like how they gauge what they want to do with it, right? Like maybe for a game like Chrono Trigger, they want to do something more akin to like Final Fantasy VII remake.
Yeah, maybe, and that's a whole other topic in itself, right? Like, should a game like that get that kind of treatment or not? Yeah. Look, I mean, I had this talk with Xeon, and the where I'm at on it is I feel like Chrono Trigger in its own state ages incredibly well. Like I love FF7, and it's undeniable that game is a major piece of history. But I think especially for the time it came out, it could stand for a little more of a visual rehaul and work done. And obviously, the direction they've taken it is in a completely different direction. It is not a remake in the traditional sense. And so for Chrono Trigger, in my mind, I'm like, they could just release like a port with decent, just like, you know, just make it look good on modern displays. Don't give it pixel smoothing. Just make it look good on a modern display, and I'd be happy. If they want to put extra work into it, I'll take an HD 2D version.
Yeah.
I'm down for that too.
That's kind of what I mean too, where it's like if they wanted to do a new game, like they could just do both. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
yeah. If they wanted to
they
do
did
Honestly,
that,
like
right?
Trials.
yeah,
Trials did that exact thing back to back. They announced them simultaneely, which was
It is crazy. I mean, it's the kind of thing where I wonder if their games, I mean, like Trials, like Live Alive, where the less known they are, the more they can just like kind of just make a decision. And as soon as it becomes too popular, like honestly, Chrono Trigger, it might be analysis paralysis to some degree where they're like, we could do this, we could do that. And like, it's hard to really pin down what exactly to do because it feels like there's too much possibility maybe.
Right. And it has been, not necessarily remastered, but like it has been ported and had content changed, right? Like it got that PS1 collection version that added those like little anime cutscenes. It got the DS re-release, which added some new stuff that was fine. More or less the core experience was still the main reason to play it. It's like, and then maybe that's it, right? They've already put it through a regular re-release before, and so now it's like, well, do we re-release the DS version? Do we re-release that's what's weird about the pixel remasters for Final Fantasy, right? Is that some of those games, like 4, have been remade so many times, and the pixel remasters actually kind of hit the reset button on some of those. They removed a lot of content that was added in later ports and in favor of just redoing the visuals and then maybe keeping some quality of life changes. And so maybe that's what it is. Yeah, maybe they can't decide what exact form they want it to take yet. Whereas Live Alive, there's no pressure, right? Like how many people even heard of this game before?
I mean, I definitely hadn't. So
Same.
it was news to me. It was fun.
That's always a fun thing too. And these directs, like watching for like the game, because just by how they talk about it that it's like this is a cult classic or whatever, right? But I'm like just waiting for the Twitter reaction, be like, should I care about this?
Right.
And those are always the
And that's
interesting
why
games.
it's fun to watch along with because I mean it depends on the direct, but like there's been times that I've watched with the guys from Good Vibes Gaming or something like that, and it's just fun because like for these ones where I basically like got back into gaming around the Switch era, so I have many gaps in my history, which means that there's a bunch of stuff like this where it's just like I didn't even know about that, and having people with that knowledge be like, this is a big deal for one reason or another is just cool. Like, it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily more or less excited about it, but just like knowing that other people are excited about it puts
That's
a little
the
pep in my
best
step.
part about the internet. We talked earlier a little bit about how the bad side of that, the discourse.
Right.
But the best part about the internet is being able to see people that are like super passionate about pretty much everything. There's somebody
you're always gonna
that's popping off about everything.
Yeah, for every game that's out there, except maybe like ET on Atari, like for every game that's out there, there's someone who's like the number one fan, right? Like you're always going to find those people. And that's what was like really fun about this one, right? Is that I feel like, obviously the widespread hype wasn't there that much, but the few people that knew what Live Alive was lost their minds.
Yeah, we're super hyped.
Yeah.
Which I think does a lot, especially now, like with people like us on the internet that like evangelize for these games, basically. You see all these people talk about the game, and then that snowball effects, because then their friends is like, "Yo, I was watching this YouTuber talking about this game, and it sounds cool. I want to buy it."
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, just looking at I put the link to the UK charts or whatever. And this game was number 6 in the UK last week, and that's not including digital. And for this game, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Like it might, I don't know if it's one that's going to have legs necessarily outside of like, it's always hard to tell with that kind of thing. But I mean, Octopath Traveler kept selling and stuff. And if people keep talking about it and it being like, in the Game Awards or something like that, then like it's definitely, it will have met expectations for sure.
Yeah.
And honestly, meeting expectations is all this kind of stuff needs for these companies to continue to have realistic expectations, work towards those, and then make games, or publish games.
You know what I think is going to happen?
So it's great.
I think it's going to sell like 1 million units on Switch, and then like a year from now, or maybe 2, it'll be on Steam. It'll do whatever it does
100%.
over there. And then if the rumors are true about Sony buying Square Enix, it goes to PlayStation.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's weird about this one too is that the Western version at least was published by Nintendo. Like they handled publishing in the West, which I mean, there's historical precedent for games getting published by them and then ported to other stuff later. But there could be, you know, some agreements that maybe some platforms aren't on the table. Like Daemon Ex Machina, Nintendo published that for Switch, and then it came out like a year later on PC through Xseed. But it was only PC, and it was with a different publisher. So
I
like,
only think that it comes to PlayStation if Sony buys Square. That's the only way.
But I mean, there's certain contracts in place that's that still makes it tough.
And just as far as precedent goes, Octopath, published by Nintendo, came a year later to PC, but then it came to Xbox, I think, after that.
Yeah, was Octopath published by Nintendo though? Like I know, I mean, like Nintendo did a lot of advertising for it, but.
And that happens a lot too, right? Where you got to look at who published it in Japan, because for Switch games, Nintendo publishes a lot of Square Enix exclusives here,
in the West,
but in Japan, Square Enix publishes them. So I'm curious if they publish Live Alive in Japan.
Square Enix did publish in Japan.
They did.
It was Nintendo was only for the Western version.
Yep. As opposed to like Astral Chain, which is Nintendo everywhere, you know, and stuff like that. So yeah, it is. It's always interesting with these kinds of things. I wonder what those deals are behind the scenes.
Also, I know I derailed us, but I know there was a segue in there for Square Enix talk.
Well,
I got us back on it, but
drop my mic. Also, we do have some Q&A specifically. I mean, we'll have other Q&A later, but there were a couple questions on Live specifically, so I just feel like we could go ahead and pull those up. Xeon, who's been mentioned like 23 times so far, said about the conversation, yes, I need this in my life. Question: if you had the choice, how would you ask people to pronounce this game's name?
I say it all. I say live, live, live and live, love.
Yeah, I mean, like Live Alive is apparently the official title. I always like Live Alive because, I mean, even though it's not what the phrase is, it kind of sounds like it's saying live a life, which taps on the whole idea of like switching meaning. That just felt like the natural one to me. But I mean, also English is weird. And then other people using English gets weirder. Like it's just, it's a mess. Why am I so out of focus suddenly? Okay.
I definitely agree. That's when I saw Xeon's question earlier, I also thought live alive just because, feels borderline punny, but not quite. But you know.
I mean, this game loves puns anyways, so
also that's like,
I don't know if you've caught.
Go for it.
I was just gonna say, I don't know if you've caught like there's so many references in this game to like different popular fiction and stuff. I mean, in like the Wild West chapter, there's characters named Clint and I mean, just like every major cowboy actor basically has someone named after them. The Imperial China one, all the apprentices are named or at least inspired by real life actors that were big in like martial arts cinema. It loves puns and like pulp and like just references to pop culture that were relevant in the 90s.
Very Mother-esque in that way. Cool. I was just going to say I like the meme on the internet. I don't even know if I would necessarily want to call it a meme because it's like it goes further than just one specific reference point. But when people are like, "Do you say this or this?" and it's spelled the same way, like a lot of times it's easy to interpret what they mean because it's just obvious. Like, do you say tomato or tomato? Like, that's always a funny meme.
That is fun. Thrill House asked, while I didn't enjoy Live Alive, I can say that it looked amazing. It had me thinking how great Super Castlevania or the Contra games would look in that style. Side-scrollers might not pop as much, but what 8/16-bit games do you think would thrive with an HD 2D remake?
Mother.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many fan favorites and cult classics like that, right? And RPGs specifically do well for it. I mean, my brain, I'm tuned into more stuff that hasn't come here yet. So, like, my first thought is I always switch up which one's supposed to be plural, but it's Treasure of the Rudras or Treasures of the Rudra. That's like another one that Square Enix only had in Japan. Super cool, unique RPG also that was experimental, and I would love to see that happen. And like we said earlier, Chrono Trigger, I mean, I just feel like it's an easy answer. Yeah, I mean, just all the things, really. Like, I feel like this style is just getting its life into it, and this is the first experiment with a remake. So, how much more can we do now? You know, Dragon Quest 3 is on the way too. So,
I hate the name though. Change the name. Name makes me angry.
HD2D, I mean, my obvious answer would be obvious, so I'm trying to think of something besides that, which is Golden Sun for Kevin. Everybody else already knows.
I would love that.
That's what I meant.
I agree, though. That would be wonderful.
Yeah. Although it would be interesting, just because like it wouldn't work exactly the same as these other games, because already there is already 3D kind of aspects of the battle animations and stuff like that. So I would be interested to see like how that kind of thing translates. So maybe it isn't specifically the like, you know, HD 2D TM kind of style, but just
3D, and I am going to freaking hurt something.
Well, and this thing too is like seeing other devs do it, right? Because right now it's just Square Enix that's really been doing it. So like when we see, you know, is Nintendo interested in trying this with one of their past ones, or are we going to see, I don't know, someone get rights from Konami to do something with, you know, one of their many titles? Who knows?
Yeah. Yep, for sure. Here's one. I don't know if this would specifically be HD 2D or anything like that, but I feel like a good remake of Zelda 2 could be really interesting. Like if it's just get rid of any of the jank that's in there and do some like interesting things with, I don't know. I feel like that could be fun, because that, you know, that game's kind of a pariah in some ways. And so
give it a little love. Yeah, well, that's why I love an indie game that came out earlier this year that I'm blanking on the name right now, which is terrible. It's basically these indie devs that took the concept of Simon's Quest, Castlevania 2, and basically made their own version of that that's better. And, you know, it's like the same basic general concept of being kind of nonlinear, you know, getting hints from people of where to explore, what to do, having the day-night cycle, and it's awesome.
Yeah, that's super cool. Z Giggler asked, favorite of the stories in Live Alive and why? This is just a Kevin question.
Yeah, because I probably would say the Edo chapter, just because it really, I think it's like the most ambitious one in terms of what its weird gimmick is. It's by far the most replayable one. Like I enjoyed all the chapters and I've liked my time with all of them, but Edo specifically is one where, you know, on the same save file, you might just start it up again to do it differently, and you can get so much. Like it by itself is practically its own game, which is awesome. I love that. I feel like this is the pariah for some people, but the Far Future chapter, because while it's very low on action and it's very dry at the start, where it kind of ends up and some of the dialogue that's in it is like the strongest out of all of them. Like it has like the best ending out of all of them out of nowhere. Like you don't really see it coming because it's so dry at the start, and I think it just pans out wonderfully.
That's interesting to hear, because that was definitely the one where I was like, I had to be kind of sold on it as I was playing it.
It should have been in the demo, in my opinion.
That's what I was going to say. Like, it seemed like a weird one to put in the demo, just because, again, it's the one that doesn't have any battles as part of it. So like, I was kind of waiting for the shoe to drop, essentially, or like waiting for, you know, like, all right, so when's the battle going to happen, and what's that going to be like for this guy? Or
the back half of that chapter is so much better, and that's why it being in the demo felt weird to me. Like I feel like prehistory or near future would have been probably like a stronger pick for something that's like a little more dynamic, because the Far Future one, again, love the ending, but it's a very slow start.
That's interesting.
I like the fourth one. That's my favorite.
Totally. You love it.
Great.
Last question for this section, and then we'll keep moving on to other things. Alec asked, what absurd name would each of you give to your Square Enix RPG?
I'd call my JRPG Game 2, but there's only one.
Beautiful.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh, man, this is like an actual question I have to think about now.
I know. What's just like fancy words just for the sake of fanciness?
The thing is, there's been so many ridiculously named ones that all I want to do is say those names out loud, like Infinite Undiscovery, or you know, there's just so much it's one of those things where there's so many wild examples. I don't know how to come up with an original one on the spot, because it's like, oh wait, no, that sounds silly because it is a real one that I played.
Okay, how about Elysium Dystopia? Revergerance, just some made up word at the end, you know, just for fun.
But you gotta replace all the E's with a D, but it's upside down and has slit in it.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a made up character in the language of the game.
Perfect. All right, but yeah, so we were talking earlier about like, there was a better segue for it before, but who's to say? Here we are. Yeah, Square Enix. So, I mean, it's kind of a rumor at this point, or it very much is a rumor at this point. So it could be that it's nothing. Even if it's a true rumor, could still be that it doesn't materialize. So who's to say? But somebody claims that Sony is interested in acquiring Square Enix Tokyo, especially after all the like Activision stuff with Microsoft and Bethesda and all those bits and pieces, that Sony has their eye on Square Enix. And in the world where this happens, I don't know, what's our thoughts and what does that look like for the landscape of gaming?
Kevin, you have a bigger stake in this than I do, so I'll let you go first.
Well, I'll throw out right away that part of the reason why this is trending again a lot is, the first time it happened, it was kind of that weird, like someone said that this might be happening. And then, it kind of got traced back to a few different people in the community that, had heard things from who knows who. And that's always harder to trace. The reason why it's getting extra talked about again now is the source of the rumor, even though it's this person saying they heard it as a rumor, is one of the people who worked at, I can't remember which company right now, either Crystal Dynamics or IDOS, one of the Western devs that was underneath Square that got sold earlier this year. Yeah. They were basically like, I heard that, maybe part of the reason this happened is because Square is trying to, slim down for a potential Sony buyout. And maybe he's talking, I don't think he even specifies where he heard that rumor. So he might be talking about the same rumor that we all heard 2 months ago. And he was like, oh yeah, that makes sense to me. Maybe he heard it from someone at the company. Again. Yeah. It's hard to trace where that rumor even starts. So, him talking about it, it gives a little more weight, but ultimately it's also him saying he heard a rumor and he doesn't, I don't think he specified where he heard it from either. So who knows? My stance on it, I don't love the who should buy who conversations as much. Look, it's going to happen. It happens. And I think there are times where you can talk about who you think would be the best fit. But at the end of the day, I'd like Square Enix to just kind of keep doing Square Enix things, especially when it comes to the concept of keeping stuff on multiple platforms. They do a lot of stuff that's Nintendo and PlayStation. Some stuff goes to all platforms and PC included as well. And I like it that way. Yeah. Now, with that in mind, if it was a matter of, not if, but when, like it's going to happen, it's unavoidable, whatever. Yeah, Sony's cool. I think that's a good fit. They have a lot of strong history. A lot of the stuff that's kind of identified as PlayStation exclusives from back in the day were Square Enix properties. Final Fantasy VII is synonymous with PS1, and so that history's strong. And same can be said for them with Nintendo. Yeah, there was a lot of strong stuff too.
Just depends on the era that you know them for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I would say later on it made him a little more heavy Square, right? Like PS1, PS2, even once multi-platform started becoming a thing, they still showed a little extra favoritism on the Sony side of things. Right. So sure, if it was going to be someone, I guess, but I'd be down for them to just keep doing their thing.
I'll say,
I think it is. Yeah, go for it.
It depends on how they approach it, because Xbox has made it cool to be like, we own you, but I don't care. You can still date them. I don't know, whatever. Sony wouldn't do that. Nintendo wouldn't do that. In fairness.
Well, Sony is doing it a little bit, right? Because Bungie, they acquired Bungie, but Bungie is going to be allowed to do.
And also,
are they
MLB
making
the
new
show?
Games? Or are they just going to maintain Destiny 2?
So the claim, this is based on, their initial announcements. I believe the wording from Bungie is that they're going to continue being multi-platform. Okay. Because really the main benefit for Sony in this deal is learning how to run a live service game. Right. They've said, this is why we're buying Bungie, is we just want to know how to do this so we can apply it to more of our titles.
Which,
but I think, additionally, MLB the show's the other standout one to me.
But that feels more like MLB. I'm pretty sure that was an MLB imposed decision.
Yeah, okay. They ultimately own the rights, and they want to make more money. So they're like, hey, put this on everything. Why should this only be on Sony?
I think the gist of it was basically if you want to be the developer for this video game, put it on other stuff, or we're out, and we're going to find a different developer that will.
Gotcha.
So all right. Whatever.
Yeah, because I would definitely say outside of those specific examples, Sony definitely feels like Nintendo again, like they did.
Yeah,
you
either
just
one
said too.
Of them would be bad for people that
you would
want
be
them
keeping
on
it for yourself for sure. The only thing that I could see with Sony is that maybe they're just seeing the benefit of being having some publisher first studios. If so, like Microsoft has at this point. And then because those ones, you're making more money off of some of those, but you can also keep particular games for yourself.
Yeah,
and
right.
especially considering that Sony, like the games that they would most want to broadcast would be like the Final Fantasy VIIs and the like.
Yeah, that's also. That's also what's kind of wild, though, right? Is that like they already have that? Like, why does Sony need to spend money on FF7 remake? Sure, it went to PC later, but it's still platform PlayStation.
I think it's because they do currently spend money on it, and that's the thing that makes me not have a lot of faith in if they bought it, because they actively spend money on maintaining exclusivity. Like, there's no shot that they didn't spend money on remake specifically. And a lot of
and then
other
15
games
coming up as well, right?
And, and Spider-Man for
16,
for freaking Avengers game, like stuff like that. Like they do that a lot, and it's not even just exclusive to Square. And to be fair, Xbox has a history of doing it too, but they stopped a while ago. That hasn't been a thing that they've done in the last like 2 generations.
Yeah. Though the Avengers thing, I mean, you're talking about Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's because Sony owns Spider-Man, like rights-wise. So that wasn't even like they probably didn't have to pay for that. That was just
because they own the film rights for Spider-Man. It feels more like they're trying to have that idea that they own Spider-Man just across the board, but to my knowledge that's not true, because Spider-Man
he's in Marvel Ultimate Alliance.
Exactly. He's in that game.
True.
So that is weird.
That is true.
They just want that just like a lot of exclusivity stuff, like if it's content exclusive or like marketing deals, they want the perception. They want the exclusive, like the exclusivity on the perception of it, because that's almost as good as it being a PlayStation game. Because if everybody just buys it on PlayStation anyway, it might as well have just been a PlayStation game. And I'd imagine it's slightly cheaper to just have the perception than to like actually have full exclusivity.
Yeah.
Well, it's also the sort of it's upfront cost versus long term, right? Because how many times do you pay for exclusivity before it becomes
it's just a
we could have just bought this,
right?
Right. Yeah, no, it's super interesting. I think the thing that would be a shame is if Sony were to buy Square Enix, and got all their games, including the Live Alive kinds of things and anything like that. The shame would be that at this point, no other companies have, besides some indie developers, like no other big publishers are even close in terms of catching up to the modern day turn-based RPG output as Square currently is. And that's just like, I don't know, that's, at this point there's a resurgence of that genre, and like maybe that would leave an opening, and so more studios would then start to develop those games, but also it could just bring it back to being a bit of a niche again, because like truly those games are getting the most sales on, I mean, PC for sure, and also Switch, so
although I mean,
interesting.
I mean, they as far as like bigger name, especially on a higher budget, but I mean, Atlas also, right?
Yeah, that's true.
That's under Sega,
and
that that even introduces a conversation, right? Of like, if Square Enix were to get bought out, how much more valuable does Atlas become as the free agent that could get taken over, through Sega, because they're under Sega already. But then, I mean, there's always been that running joke of like, who should Xbox buy next? Oh, Sega, because they need Japanese titles,
right?
It just becomes that much more interesting.
Additionally, I think Nintendo themselves should make more turn-based RPGs. That's my opinion, because don't really.
I think that's.
It's been a while.
That's the like for me, I'm like more mixed on like the concept of like acquisitions and stuff like that, because I do believe in the idea that like
the competition.
Stuff like this forces everybody to do better. It forces the person that just spent billions of dollars on this new company to utilize the new company to make their money back, and incentivizes everybody to then compete with the new like like fervor for this company and the games that they make, and they're like, well, I want games like that, like it's you see it kinda, because we haven't seen a lot of the games that like were a result of this with Xbox yet, but you see it with Xbox, where they're like, okay, we see that we got destroyed by PlayStation last gen, and a lot of the games that they make are the third person action adventure games. We don't really have that, so let's get our Uncharted, that whole thing where they're like trying to check very well defined boxes. And I think that like if everybody, as long as everybody is like catered to in this sense, where like Nintendo gamers get the same type of games, but it's like tailored to their taste and like the type of properties that they that resonate with the Nintendo audience. And the same for PlayStation, the same for Xbox. That's a W.
Yeah.
And it's even bigger W for like people like me and you, Kevin, that have access to multiple consoles. Because we can play
Yeah, and I was
anyway.
gonna say that's kind of. Yeah, but that's kind of the problem too, right? Is it like it shouldn't be?
It shouldn't. Yeah.
I mean, like that's cool. Like competition's cool, right? And we have
Right.
competition right now, even if it's not, everything is Sony versus Xbox or whatever. But like that is the dark version of that. Is like, okay, cool. Now everyone's trying to make their own awesome RPG, and now you have a reason to own every system. But
Right.
most
then you
people
gotta-
don't
yeah.
want that situation.
Right.
I mean, ultimately, like I mean, I've said this all the time, right? Is that like I don't really have a huge stake in like picking PlayStation or Xbox, and I tell most people like pick the one that has games that interest you.
Right.
And that's a lot more of a messed up situation when, if the entire
When
market hits
everything
this,
has,
like,
yeah.
exactly. There's this wild endpoint where everyone owns someone, and now there are no true multi-platform games aside from whatever Xbox puts stuff on PC, and PlayStation 2 now at this point, just with a little, larger window between them.
It's
And that's kind of messed up. Like that sucks.
feels,
Like,
it feels complicated because like I definitely agree with that. Like games should they should just be accessible and easy for as easy as possible because it's a luxury hobby anyway. Like even just like a Switch is $300. You know what I mean? So like on that end for sure. But there is something to be said for like people just getting or companies, I mean specifically, being complacent and being like, well, I'm going to sell it anyway, so I'm just going to make whatever. But when you're putting their feet to the fire by these big acquisitions and stuff like that, I think that incentivizes them. So basically what I mean is like I think there's good to both ends, but for sure, I think the accessibility is a problem.
Yeah. There's certainly kind of a doomsday scenario with that. I mean, not doomsday, but it feels icky if things were to get that point, right?
Yeah. But it doesn't feel like at all? Xenoblade Chronicles 3, because it's getting great reviews.
It's true.
And that's it. Good job,
Great
game.
reviews.
You're doing
It's
it.
doing great. I'm excited to play it myself. I was not one of the. I do not have early access, so I'm getting it Friday, and we'll see what I think. I'm excited.
Yeah. What was your? Did you play all the other Xenoblade games or?
Yeah, I played all the others, and I'll be honest. I feel like I'm not amongst like the most hyped fans. Like I've enjoyed Xenoblade, but it's never really been like my top favorite one. I have my issues with some of the entries, side quest bloat especially, but I enjoy the stories, especially the 1-in-1. I'm really curious how 3 looks like it's trying to kind of tie everything together a little more strongly than the other ones already have a bit. So I'm curious where it's all going. Like and I'm a huge fan of the older stuff that throws back references too. I mean the trailers and stuff we've seen. There's so many little allusions to stuff from like Xenogears and Xenosaga that I'm like, okay, I eat that stuff up. So
yeah, I played 1 and 2, and I've played a little bit of Torna. And I think I played 2 first, and so I think I have more of a soft spot for that. And also, I played it when before doing any YouTube stuff, so I had just time on my hands. And so, as far as like side quest bloat and stuff, when it's the only game you have that you're playing at the time, that kind of stuff doesn't really stand out too much. But then, as soon as I was playing Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition and was doing YouTube stuff and was trying to, kind of get a move on with it, I felt that for sure. But still, good game.
And 1 is a lot worse than 2 in that regard. Like, I'll still give 2 a little crap for that, but compared to 1, I mean, 1 just has so many. Here's 80 side quests that have all opened up, and they're all just different flavors of go kill these guys or go get these items, and it's very dry. 2 at least had like the blade side quests, and there was a little more plot and stuff to them that made them. There were still some of those ones that were whatever, but. That was improved, so I'm hoping it gets further improved in 3.
It did also feel like in 1 to like really become familiar with the world that you were in, you should have done this side quest. Like I don't really feel like, even though I played the game, I didn't really feel like I ever, I don't know, was intimately familiar with the world that I was in. It was kind of like I was just moving through it. I probably was also looking too much at like the map markers and stuff and trying to, get a move on to some degree. Whereas 2, I think because it was on smaller Titans and that kind of thing, like I might not have been super familiar with the exact paths that I took or anything, but the biomes, that kind of thing, they felt more. I have a lot stronger memories of each of them, which I'm sure other people that played Xenoblade Chronicles 1 first and then 2 afterwards might feel the opposite. But yeah, I I have some qualms with 2, mostly just in the like, I don't care that it was particularly anime. I just, because anime is great, but yeah, some gratuitous stuff was like, oh my goodness, come on guys, just chill.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not going to let that, I'm not like angry about it. I'm just like, I could do without it. You know,
exactly.
It's like, I liked 1's balance a little better than that part, and I do agree with you. Actually, I think 2 does a better job of kind of pacing and world introduction. I just like the overall story of 1 more. I think it just, especially like, I feel like it lands really well,
and it feels like 1 didn't have to think of itself in the context of another game because it didn't, whereas 2 had like was like, okay, how can we remix some of these ideas and then tied together with like a piece of twine, and that I still honestly I had to watch a whole like 26-minute YouTube video explaining how the 2 things. I mean, it was like a couple years later, so I'd fully forgotten, but like by the time I finally played 1, I was like, I don't know how these games come together. But that said, I'm hoping Xenoblade Chronicles 3, from the sounds of it, does do a pretty good job of uniting all of that, and I don't know, that's just really fun. So
yeah, I'm excited to find out.
Yeah, I probably won't play it right at launch, but I'll play it when I know that I have more time to actually sink into it, probably later in the year.
I played a little bit of all of them and progressively less every time. Except for X. I played freaking 30 hours of X because I wanted to play the robot on the box. And then I got to the part with the robot on the box and it felt terrible. So then I was like, I'm out of here.
I need to go back to X. That's one I have not put enough time into. So yeah, I've played all the chronological ones. I have not finished X. So I want to go back to that. I need to rehook up my Wii U just for that. Unless.
True.
That's true.
HDTV.
Yeah. There you go.
Imagine.
I mean, they just take the game and they turn it down to like 48p, so it's just super pixelated. It's like,
it's a demake remake. I don't know. Like,
that's how you do it. So, I mean, that's a game that maybe we'll eventually be playing. But right now, theoretically, there are games that we actually are playing. And let's talk about some of those. Any games you guys are playing? Obviously, Live Alive to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, that was the most recent thing for me, for sure.
Yep.
It's true. You playing anything else?
I mean, right before that, I was doing some catch-up work on finishing stuff. Like, for instance, I have played all the Xenoblade games, but I never actually played the new content added in Definitive Edition, the Future Connected. So I did that like a week ago. Lots of.
How did you feel like
Ninja
that
Turtles.
stacked up as compared to other Xenoblade things or whatever? Like, yeah,
it was good. I'm really curious how I'm going to feel about it after playing 3, because part of I feel like very much, especially with the name they chose and the timing of, this coming out as part of a re-release before the 3rd entry comes out, I feel like maybe because right now it's just sort of like, oh, this was like an extra story that's like cool to play. I'm curious if it's actually going to tie into 3 in any way. And I feel like that would heavily impact how I feel about it. How I feel about it right now, it was good. I think in terms of like, additional story, I like Torna more. I think Torna did a lot of really interesting stuff mechanically, and I like how it filled in kind of a prologue to 2 more so. It was a cool follow-up, and I'm curious if the context of it's going to change with 3.
Yep, makes sense.
Cool. Parker, you playing anything?
I am. Yeah, so some same old. I popped up in the Switch the other day and had a little bit more time to kill than I usually do. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to open one of the folders, because we got folders now. The one that's my backlog games, and just see if there's any of these games that, I mean, there were a couple that were still technically in my backlog folder that I was like, I played 5 minutes of this game and recognized that it's, like Human Fall Flat, for example. It's like, that's a fun game. I played it with a friend for like 10 minutes one time, and I'm counting that because I'm just not going to go through and play that game by myself. And so like, if I play it, cool. If not, it's off the backlog. It counts. But there were a couple games that were on there that I decided between. And one of them, I bought Moonlighter a while, like I think like first of the year basically for like $6 instead of $25 or something like that. And I'd heard good things about it from the guys at Flip Screen Games. Used to, when they were back as podcast, they talked about it a bunch, and every time they talked about it, it sounded fun but intimidating. Kevin, have you played it at all?
A little bit. I messed with the one a tiny bit, but
Nice.
It's not one I fully got into. Because it is roguelike in nature, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, roguelikes for me are always like they either click or they don't.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like I've started so many, and even the ones that get a lot of praise, sometimes I'll try it out and maybe I have to revisit it half a year later. That's actually, so for games playing right now, I did forget. I started playing Into the Breach with the new update, because I didn't really mess with it much.
Playing that, so I'm curious.
I didn't mess with it much when it first came out, even though I heard great stuff, and I love mechs. So I mean, it should be my jam, but I just didn't, for whatever reason, didn't click for me when it first came out. I started playing it on Steam Deck, and I'm hooked now. So that is something else I've been playing lately. Is that, because the update was cool.
It's for that one specifically, like I played it just a little bit and I was like, I really like these mechanics. I think as I was playing it, I wasn't thinking of it as a roguelike. And so because of that, I think as I was like losing steam in my playthrough, I was de-incentivized from continuing because I didn't think about the whole like, you'll die and start again and it'll be fine.
You have to accept you're going to die, like a lot.
Exactly. And that's the thing is like, because I was thinking of it as just a regular single player game, that kind of hurt that for me. So I think I just need to push through, let myself die, start again, and then go from there. And that's fine. But
that's absolutely,
awesome.
I think, what happened to me too. I think my first playthrough, I just didn't approach it like a roguelike, and now I have, and it's it's better.
That's cool. Honestly, as far as you said, like certain ones don't click that much. Like, so I played through Hades until I got to Hades, and I had like the best loadout the first time I got to him and just narrowly didn't kill him. And then the next time I got to him, it was just like hopeless. I had a, probably regular loadout and just wasn't good enough. And at that point I was kind of like, I know there's more that I can see this game, but I don't really care that much. Like I had a fun time with it, but I definitely wasn't hooked like I was with some other games. Whereas like Enter the Gungeon, which I don't play like that many roguelikes, but of the ones that I have played, I had a fun enough time with Hades, but like Enter the Gungeon hooked me a lot more back at the time. And I still go back to that one pretty often, every 4 or 5 months or something. And then, Moonlighter, I just started it a couple days ago. And I always feel like, and probably accurately so, that I don't have that much time to play games in this current season of life. But certain games, once I like get started, and if they're easy to pick up and play, time will find itself and then I'll end up just playing it more, and that's just a fun little thing. So that game, for the elevator pitch for anybody who doesn't know about this game, it's pixel art kind of thing, and it's a roguelike where you go into a dungeon and you kill some enemies and the rooms are randomly generated and all that kind of stuff, but you also collect resources and then you bring those resources back. You've got a way that you can like leave the dungeon before dying, and if you do that, whereas most roguelikes you just go till you die and then that's it, whereas like you go through a bunch of rooms and then you can leave with all your loot and you bring it back, and then you have a shop where you can sell the loot that you have, but you can only bring a certain amount with you. So that's the kind of big loop of it, is that you go into these places and you kind of have to pick and choose at some points. Like, okay, I have this stuff in my bag, but there's something on the floor there from an enemy that I just killed that like I could pick that up instead. And then sort of weighing those things. And there's like even a little bit of a puzzle element where like if you open a chest inside one of the dungeons, there will be some items that have specific rules where like this can only be, if your backpack is a like 5x5 square or something like that. This item can only be on the left or right or on the top or bottom of your thing, or this item, when it goes back to town, will destroy the item directly to the left of it. So you can put it just all the way on the left side of your bag and then it doesn't destroy anything. But like the more of those that you have, it starts becoming like a bit of a puzzle of like how to put all these things in there. But then there's some things that they'll do. It's like where this item, if you place it, like when you place it, the item above it loses the curse that's on it or whatever. So it's just like, It's interesting, but
Yeah.
I'm realizing I'm trying to like way too much, like to the same degree that I tried to min-max Stardew Valley. I'm trying to min-max the loot collection in this to where I could have easily beaten the first of 5 dungeons by now, and I haven't because I keep going in trying to get the exact right loot and then getting out of there.
Same thing with
And
arcades too.
it's true, and so I'm realizing that I need to just kind of chill a little bit.
Just play a game, dude. That's why that like exaggerates how little time you have for games, because every game you play, it's like a thing. TM. Like,
There's dedication involved. Yeah,
there is.
Got a clear schedule. Yeah.
But that said, it is really fun, and like the last bit, in the shop when you bring your items back, so you can craft some things with it. But then also there are items that aren't used for crafting at all. They're just things that you sell, and you get to set the price for those items, and the customers will come in like one at a time, peruse your wares, and then will give some kind of reaction of like, this price is obviously too high or too low.
It's like the lemonade stand game I played in first grade.
it's like that, but with a bunch of items. I'm just getting
flashbacks to Reciteer. Like that's
Yep. So that part's is fun once I got into it, and like you can also, if you don't want to work too hard at that part, you can just Google what this is the neutral price for this item. This is the price when it's particularly popular. Cheating. Yeah, so you can't. I've only done that accidentally for like 2 items, and there's definitely been some items where I've just
Google, my bad.
Well, I've definitely looked up a bunch of items to be like, can you craft something with this? Like, do I want to save this, or can I just sell it? Because I hate that in games.
There? All right, that's fair enough. That's fair.
Yeah, so exactly. But like, because in some Pokemon games, you'll get some items that have a description, like tiny feather or something like that. I can't remember if that's one or not. But it'll have a description that makes it sound like it's useful, but it's not. Feather. You just sell it for money.
Yeah,
pretty feather. You got it.
Yep.
And so then I'm like, I don't want to sell that because I should keep it. And then, you should sell it.
Yep, just holding on forever.
Yeah. Sure. So that's me.
Maybe
that's what I'm playing.
Sell it, because if you go and store inside, you can sell it for more money, dude.
There you go.
Maybe.
Kind of min-max your you. Do you didn't know that? Is that it? Is that all the games you're playing?
I think that's all I'm playing.
All right, I'm playing a little bit of a lot of stuff. For multiverses, did I talk about that? I played a little bit because the thing is, I can only play a little bit in the interest of a bet that I'm having with Wood and Scootish. Because the whole thing is like, it's team-based Smash Brothers situation for people that don't know. And the whole thing is me and Bob pretty good at Smash Brothers. Wood and Jackson, not so much. So they played it in the closed alpha situation, and they played a few hours. And the whole thing was like, I challenged them, and I was like, yo, me and Bob will not touch this game beyond what is reasonable. And you guys can practice as much as you want. And we're going to do like a, first to 3 or whatever the amount of the grudge match is. And whoever wins is cringe. I mean, whoever loses is cringe. And Bob was like, yo, what if we put $1,000 on it? So now we're getting really into the content sphere thing.
Spicy.
That's a free video. That's a free video. Yo, I robbed my friends for $1,000.
I mean, absolutely make that video.
Yeah. If you don't think I'm making that video, but yeah, no.
I mean, just shoot it now. I mean, you just have confidence.
I'm writing the script as we speak. Nice. I'm gonna do the whole. It's just gonna be a freaking Ludwig video. Like, boy, like that whole crap. But yeah, no, that's gonna be if they actually go through, because it's a little bit of trepidation on their end. It seems. But if they go through with it, that's gonna be, 1, hilarious, but 2, the easiest money I ever won in my life. Because Smash Bros. I get it. I understand platform fighters, man, and
it's a neat game.
It's a cool
the
game.
little I played, I really thought was awesome. I just have not put that much time into it since.
Did you? So you played it during the alpha, right?
Yeah,
Have you
a
played
little
it
bit?
any since then? Like in the
I haven't done the current run right now just because I was sidetracked with trying to do Live Alive as fast as I could for review and stuff. So I've just been all over the place. And then I'm going on a trip this weekend, so I can't play it while I'm this weekend either. So
yeah.
I want to put more time in. It just hasn't really lined up lately with everything else I'm trying to get through. But I mean, the biggest thing for me, aside from it just being like a fun, solid Smash style game, the attention to detail for some of the characters' movesets and like how certain mechanics work. There's so many cool little
Like
allusions to their
Velma when she
properties.
crouches and stuff like that. Like how it gets blurry because she lost her glasses.
Right, exactly. Or
That's so fun.
like Tom and Jerry's moveset is them fighting each other.
Yep. Except for when Jerry
genius.
dies, Jerry can die, which
and
is which is
There's stuff that's like, and there's stuff that's randomly dark. Like Arya has a thing where when she defeats an opponent, a pie generates. Which, if you've watched Game of Thrones, you get the context, and it's really messed up.
yeah, this game. I'm playing Bugs Bunny because I think he's ridiculous. Just off of what I've seen and his toolkit, I'm like, this character is broken and he will be nerfed eventually. But I'm going to take advantage of him before they do that. Like he has this. There's a few mechanics that are kind of nuts for this character, but the funniest thing is like he has this Acme box where he can just pull out random items and like eat the
That's
item.
fun.
He can take out a pie and throw the pie. He has a rocket, which this is like one of his few. Well, he has a couple of like so it's largely team focused platform fighter. And like his team thing. Or things is he has a kiss move that if you hit your opponent with it, it makes them like immobilized, like they can't move, so you can just get a free punish on them. But if you kiss your friend, they heal. Same thing with the pie. Like you could throw the pie and it like slows your opponent down, but if the pie goes through your friend, it heals them a little bit. He also has like a safe that you could drop down from the sky, and then like once it drops down the sky, you can hit it with a baseball bat. And it's skims ridiculous.
That's fun.
He also has a rocket. Like his his up special is he gets on a rocket, and how this game works, there's no ledge like Smash Brothers. Like you can grab the
interesting.
ledge, but in this game, how you recover is like you can ride the wall by wall jumping up it. His rocket, you can wall jump up it. So like if your friend's about to die, you can use your rocket and they can use that to get to ledge.
That's fun.
So or not ledge to the stage because there is no ledge in this game. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that like in my head I know it's crazy, but in practice I can't practice it because if I practice then they're going to call it off and I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Makes sense.
But apart from that, I played Pokemon again. We did max raids, and me and Lee got 2 shinies. Lee got a shiny Doug Trio, and I don't remember what his other shiny was. It doesn't matter. And then I got a shiny Sneasel. Or no, that's what his 2 shinies were. He got a shiny Sneasel and a shiny Doug Trio, and or was that? I don't remember. It doesn't matter. We were talking crap about both of these shinies at one point or another. Doug Trio, he was like, oh, I hope this, like, if I get a shiny, I hope Doug Trio is not the one that I get, and then that's the one he got. And then same thing with Sneasel. We did a tier list of shinies for every generation, and Sneasel wasn't as high as people wanted it. So I was like, watch this be the shiny that I get, and it was the shiny that I got. So that was fun. And then beyond that, Smash Brothers. So Kevin, to update, to put you in the loop, I've been starting to go to Smash locals because I'm pretty good at Smash Brothers, but I don't play competitively until now. So I'm going to Smash locals, and I'm in the phase of like where I'm trying to figure out what feels good, because like it's a whole different thing to play in my room, with all these controlled variables, and a different thing with 50 people all in a venue being loud and
absolutely completely different. I mean, I used to be a lot more into the FGC scene. I feel like I'm getting pulled back in. The hype from 6 for Street Fighter 6 is really calling to me. But like, I mean, I went to college over at Cal Poly, so I was Cal Poly Pomona, which is nearby where basically where like Wednesday Night Fights and all that stuff was back in the day,
okay,
when like
yeah.
Street Fighter 4 and like, you know, before everyone got angry, or Marvel vs. Capcom 3, like all that kind of stuff. So I would go to those events. I mean, the energy is completely different from, you know, playing at home.
Yeah, and it's also a thing because it's like I play mainly Pokemon Trainer in Smash Bros. Ultimate, but I secondary Min Min because Min Min handles a lot of matchups that are annoying for Pokemon Trainer. But people don't like fighting Min Min. And since most of the time when I'm playing this game, I'm playing it like on stream, I don't want to put people against characters that they don't like fighting. And also, adjacent to that, I don't usually play to win as hard as I should. So it's like, because I want people to like want to play the game. I want to get better at the game. So I don't want to just dumpster them. But when I'm fighting somebody that I should attempt to, because they're actually good at the video game, my habit is to be like, I could kill you here, but like, just come back to it. You know, like just my muscle memory isn't there.
Don't give him an inch. Don't give him an inch.
Exactly. So I need to beat that out of my psyche and just have the killer instinct. But also it's balancing Min Min. So this week when I went to the local, I did worse than the first week, but I expected that because I wanted to try Min Min and see if Min Min felt good. And like what ended up happening, which I didn't expect, and I'm even more bad at myself this week because I could have done better, was I didn't trust Min Min. Like the whole reason why I went there was because I was like, I'm going to freaking go Min Min and I'm going to use her and blah, blah, blah. My first match, winner side, I started with Pokemon Trainer and I barely lost. It was last hit and I was like, okay, I got this next match. Let me try Min Min. I beat the guy that game, but it's best 2 out of 3. So then last hit, last stop with Min Min, I lost that and I got sent to losers. So I'm like, man, I should have just went Min Min game 1 because another side of it that I never have to consider when I'm just playing for like better, like basically casually online on twitch.tv/watchredirect. It's not stage picks and all this stuff. It's just random stages. But when you're playing in tournament, when you win matters, because if he wins the first match, that means I get the stage pick. So I pick the stage and then I beat him on that. What ended up happening with the stage pick was we just gentlemen to PlayStation 2, to Pokemon Stadium 2. And that was the game that I lost. But then I was like, nah, run it back on PS2. And I was Min Min and I won that. But since I won, his stage pick was the next thing. And he picked the stage that's bad for Min Min. Had I went Min Min and won on PS2, and then he got to pick the stage and then I lost, and then I got to pick the stage again, it would have been a better chance of me just winning. So next time I need to go Min Min. And then the last match I played against my friend, actually. And I SD'd 2 times in both of my matches. So I was like, this is terrible. But next week, if somebody has to yell at me, if I don't start with Min Min, I need to be shamed publicly.
Have faith. Good.
So
have faith in Min Min.
That's my mission. I need to do it. Because the thing is, like, something I don't give enough credit is Min Min is just an inherent skill check. Like, I can suck with Min Min, but most people are not good at fighting even bad Min Min. So my Min Min's okay. You know, I just not comfortable with her because it's not as good as my Pokemon Trainer, generally. But I needed to just suck that up and just go Min Min and go from there.
Just lean into it.
Yeah, man.
Get them off guard.
So that's my mission next week. I'll report back. What else am I playing? I mean, that's basically it. I'm playing a little bit of other stuff, but
yeah, I did remember a couple of things I'm playing. I'll be real quick because I know we've had a bit, but I've also I go through phases of just, you know, checking out whatever comes to Game Pass and trying different things out. Escape Academy, which if you like escape room stuff, it's just a cool little puzzle game. And then As Dusk Falls, which I really didn't expect to like as much as I do. Like I thought, like I'm always down for narrative stuff, and I like to have choice, consequence, and plot branching, so I'm always into that. Right. But like the art style, I was kind of like, oh, I don't know, it's this weird like, you know, semi-still frame, semi-motion, which I still don't really love. But everything else about it's grown on me. Like the writing's a lot better than I expected. The way some stuff can play out differently. I need to finish it because I was like midway through and then I started playing Live Alive. But I'm probably going to get back to that before the end of the week and I leave on a trip because I do want to finish that up. So yeah, if you have Game Pass, it's definitely something to check out.
Nice.
Yeah, Game Pass. That's a W. Love Game Pass.
As Dusk Falls, that's the one I looked it up to refresh my memory. That's the one with Alex Van Aken in it. Basically, there's one of the characters just straight up looks like him, and it's funny.
I know exactly. Yep, I follow what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like older, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
In the future.
Yep. No, that's fun. Yeah. You said the Escape Academy is basically just an escape room in video game form?
It's like the whole thing is you go to a school about being good at escape rooms basically, and you just do a lot of escape room little things back to back. So it's not super replayable because once you know the gimmick, you know the gimmick, but it's fun to play. Like if you like escape room stuff, like absolutely worth just doing a quick run through of.
It's a good Game Pass game for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how much it runs
to play like kind
on
of
its own,
co-op-ish, or like, I mean, you know, just like get a friend or two over if you want, and then you guys can like poke around at stuff just because.
Right.
Maybe not.
Like, what am I being dumb about right now? What am I missing?
Okay.
That's fun.
We good
All
to go
right,
to
now
Q&A?
the last game is Q&A.
Game? You said game? You got another game?
Yeah, it's Q&A.
Oh, it's
the
I'll
questions.
step through your segue,
It's answering.
man.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm sorry.
All right, so we got some questions from Twitter and some questions from Discord, and let's go. Let's do these. So
Let's do
Trevor
it.
asks, "What's the single biggest improvement you feel could be made of any, or could be made to any of the current gen controllers?"
Well, two of three of them have drift issues. I don't know if the Xbox One has that.
Yeah, fixing stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, like
Honestly,
it occurs in all controllers, but it's way more common on DualSense and Joy-Cons especially.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, I play on just Joy-Cons quite often. Joy-Con Pros, that would be my opinion, is just like some controller that, I mean, it's like the Joy-Cons maybe, but like just a little bit bulkier.
Kind of like what Hori's done with the Hori pad, or there's like those Binbot controllers.
But like something that, because with the Hori pad, like the split pad, if you were to take them off, because I'm pretty sure they're not Bluetooth, right? If you were to take them
the
off,
Binbox are,
then
but
they'd be okay. Gotcha. Like they wouldn't be very comfortable, one in each hand, I'd imagine, right?
I agree.
So like if there was something that like kind of melded those two things,
the missing link between the Joy-Con and the Hori pad.
that would be perfect for me, where it's like right now they still are like playing them individually. I just like to do it because then I can like sit on the couch, and the whole like Koizumi in the Switch intro thing where he's on the couch with his two arms, you know, all laid back and stuff.
RPG mode for me. Just being lazy and just at your sides, relaxing. It's great.
Yep. So just better version of that in terms of comfort, but then I mean the drift thing, too. That's for me.
Yeah. I mean, aside from fixing things, I think my first thought is just I'm surprised that at this point back buttons haven't become standard on like first party controllers, because it's like every third party controller, every pro controller, like all of them have it, and it's so useful for some stuff. I think a lot of people think about it just in terms of like competitive FPS, but it's useful in so many other situations. Like not a turn-based RPG, but there's so many action games where just having that little bit of extra, like, okay, what do I want to map to this? I'm like, Sony even did that official attachment for the DualShock 4 at the end of the PS4's life cycle, and that panned into nothing for PS5.
Action buttons is a big W for me, because like Smash Brothers, to go back to that for a second, I use the Pro controller specifically because it has more buttons, and my control layout is nuts. Like they got freaking 2 buttons for shield and 2 buttons for grab. I don't do that. I yeet one of the shield buttons and make that special. You know, my control layout is nuts. So having more buttons to do even more crazy stuff, I would love that.
I mean, even being able to port like MMOs or something like that would be more possible if extra buttons were just standard.
Right.
Yeah. And even like not for competitive stuff. Like, for instance, I use a Pro Controller really often specifically for Souls games because the run button is always a face button.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to turn my camera at the same time I'm running. So, you know, I put that on one of the back buttons because now I have the ability to run, turn, and actually see things.
Yep. Man.
Yeah, that would be good. Also, I think it would be cool, like just to, like a lot of the, like random weird stuff that we'll see in like patents. Like there was like that patent that they were going to do like a scroll trigger sort of situation. I would love seeing stuff. Give me all the wacky crap, man. I'm down.
Yeah, like because like zooming in and
stuff.
out in a lot of games or whatever, like that's that's a thing that exists, especially like kind of simmy type games. But then like the way that you do that is different and every time, and so it's just I don't know. It'd be nice.
Yeah. No, I get that totally. I mean, I love a lot of like isometric RPGs, which are great on PC, and they always translate weird control-wise to console. Like they've gotten better. I feel like they've started to figure out how to make it make more sense. But keyboard and mouse is still the best way to play those because it's just there's just so many limitations to a controller for that kind of specific situation.
Totally. A similar question, Cheesy asks, there's a lot the Switch could still improve on, but you can only pick one thing you wish it would add. What is it?
So I know performance is always a big talking point for a lot of people, especially because certain games, some more than others run into frame rate and stuff issues. But really, I think the biggest thing for me that I would love to see across the board is if they updated internal storage option speeds, because especially with how fast stuff loads now on like PS5 and Xbox Series X, because they've all moved to SSDs, like I feel load times on my Switch so much more now, especially some games. Like I remember when I was playing Age of Calamity, it was right after the Series X and PS5 came out, and I was just like, it's taking so long to just start a thing.
I couldn't
Yeah.
even think of what I would even suggest, because like I don't really run into a lot of stuff that I'm like, man, I wish the Switch was better at this personally. But quick resume, I want that. I want that so much.
Oh no, quick resume has ruined like other systems for me in that respect, because I have mostly physical on Switch, so it doesn't work as well. But oh man, like the number of times I've accidentally closed a game thinking I could just swap back because that's what I could do on Xbox, and it doesn't work on other things. Like I've absolutely done that to myself a bunch of times.
I need it.
Yeah, I changed my answer. Quick resume's the right answer, actually.
Yeah, for me, I mean, as far as like hardware gimmicks, I mean, any of those kinds of things, I'm sure there's a lot of answers. I don't know if this is allowed for answering the question, but more like, this is more software side. So again, I don't know if this counts, if this is specifically hardware, just like, I don't know, it's the Switch in general, software is included. But it's like just more little projects, and like Nintendo specifically in terms of the Switch, publishing them or like working with them, like the
More
Cadence of Hyrule kind of thing.
Yeah.
That sort of a thing. Just, it's Switch exclusive. I feel like it counts. That's fun. And also like it is. Yeah. We made a video maybe last year at some point, just pointing out how like even on the 3DS, there was a ton of just like little eShop exclusives and stuff. And yeah, we've gotten like Box Boy and Box Girl and some other ones, but just a lot fewer than in the past.
I feel like it feels like for a little bit up until like 2019. And I mean, technically 2020 with the jump rope challenge, they do at least one. They're like, all right, here's
like good job,
here's the stretcher.
Yeah, it's rough too, because there's like so much like random shovelware type stuff on the eShop now. Like it's hard to even find the diamonds in the rough now, because there's so much other stuff that I'm just like, what even is this?
Yeah.
And I think it's for me, the like Cadence of Hyrule thing, especially that idea of like, because there's tons of amazing indie games. So it's not like we're at a shortage of smaller games in and of themselves, but just of like Nintendo interacting with them in their own way. Like that feels interesting in a way that, can't really happen without them, just because they have IPs that other people can't use and stuff. So
absolutely. And I agree. Like I was really hoping we'd see more of that after that game came out. I was like, oh, this is a super cool thing. I wonder what else Nintendo's going to do. And then that stopped.
Yeah, exactly. Mega Man asked, if you had to fight a Pokemon with just your bare hands, which Pokemon do you think you could beat?
I saw he got backlash for this question. I mean, so the idea of this is like you got to get straight up to like the edge of like what's impressive, like if you just were like Pidgey, it's like who cares, man? Who can't freaking beat up Pidgey?
I mean, that said, the size the Pidgey is, like if you think about a bald eagle or something, that's probably because Pidgeys are kind of
that could wreck you if you're not.
Yeah, exactly. Like
I'm gonna say Tyrone. He's just a child.
I'll go with Ditto because like I'm already good at like beating myself up mentally. So like let's just get it. Let's just make it physical. Like let's just bring it there. And I think I'd be able to handle it.
Yep. I mean, at that point, it just becomes like a Vision and White Vision situation in WandaVision, and you're just back and forth. You can argue yourself down. I feel like if you can go like normal type Pokemon, just because at least then if I'm using my fists, then I've got, it's super effective.
Are you a fighting type? Are your fists fighting type attack?
Yeah.
I don't know because
they're fists. It sure is, because Mega Punch. Whatever. That's the normal type move. I take it back. We're gonna say Miltank. I'm really, really strong. That's all. No one can.
I don't know about that, man.
I don't.
You ever got hit
have
by
you fought
rollout?
Whitney?
Yeah.
I mean, you say that, but have you ever seen me fight a cow?
True. I never saw that. I never saw you do that before.
I get that's
also Rayquaza. I definitely.
But see, like the cow tipping crap, like that's not a thing for Miltank. Miltank can stand on just 2 feet.
Yeah, but sometimes it's asleep. I don't know. Moving on. I'm claiming Miltank completely unjustly, but here we are. Poofy Rain asks, Hey, hi. Do you think that Nintendo is having a soft end of the year release of games? Not discrediting Splatoon, Bayonetta, or Pokemon. And do you think that they're gearing up for something big next year?
The first question, no. Second question?
Yeah, I mean, that's...
Go for it.
I was just going to say, I feel like Pokemon immediately makes it... I mean, I know Pokemon has more regular releases than other franchises, and sometimes when people talk about like Nintendo having strong releases, they're basically saying Mario or Zelda.
Right.
But I mean, I feel like it's a pretty good year.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, some of the stuff's coming out a little earlier, like Xenoblade is soon this week. Originally it was going to be September, but I mean, between Pokemon and everything, I mean, I feel like this is a strong year. Sure, it would have been strong. Like, I feel like that sentiment's going around right now because like, Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be this year.
Yep.
And now it's not. And I mean, look, other games are cool. Like, I don't know, like I'm excited for Breath of the Wild 2, but I'm excited for everything else. So yeah, I don't feel like this year is soft. And look, the COVID pushed everything back. Lots. And in some of them in not fully predictable ways. So
yeah,
this year feels very much like, or at least this holiday feels a lot like 2019's, which was just a lot of like maybe not one just absolute banger in. I mean, but then again, there were just a lot of really good games like Luigi's Mansion 3, Pokemon Sword Shield. It had issues or whatever, but that was there. Link's Awakening, Dragon Quest 11S came to Nintendo, and so like there's a bunch of third-party games and stuff too coming this year, like Nier Automata and various other ones that don't come to mind. But
and we had a really strong as part of the COVID thing, right? Like we're starting to see this trend where now first quarter is actually getting a lot more wild than it normally is. Yeah. Yep. And I mean, this year, Pokemon Legends Arceus, whatever you want to call it, that came out. At least for me, Triangle Strategy, that came out. I mean, like February and March were really strong in general. I mean, Elden Ring, and how well that did. So like we had a really good start of the year and we're having a good end of the year. Maybe that could have all collapsed into one amazing holiday season, but it just got spread out a little more.
I feel like we kind of Kirby fell off a little bit, but like honestly, that was a really good game. Yeah. It was. Yeah, it just didn't have the mental staying power for some reason, but I think I had so much fun playing through it as I was playing it.
I think the thing about it is like, especially within like the Switch community specifically, I don't even mean Nintendo, but just the influx of fans with Nintendo Switch. If it's not 2017, and by 2017 I don't even necessarily mean that I feel like 2017 is any better than any other year personally, but because there was the one game that everybody was playing at two specific points of the year. There was Mario Odyssey, and everybody was playing that. And obviously Breath of the Wild came first, and everybody was playing that, because there's not those one or two games that everybody's like, I'm going to play this. People are like, this year's not as good. But I think it's better for the like gaming as a whole to have multiple games that a lot of people individually want to play, and not necessarily it be this whole like zeitgeist moment. Like I don't need everybody playing Splatoon 3, but a lot of people are going to be playing Splatoon 3. Same for Bayonetta, same for Pokemon,
I think we hang our hats off in times on I mean, honestly, the reason Mario and Zelda are popular is because they're accessible, but they're also like big adventures, and like the idea of adventure or whatever without the barrier of entry of RPG mechanics or, Bayonetta's genre in multiple directions and stuff like that. Like I think we just...
Yeah, I mean,
those aren't the only metrics. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
well, and they're also
so
just dynasties within Nintendo, right? I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
exactly.
we have a lot of the franchises that go back to the NES days, like Metroid and Kirby was on Game Boy and everything. But like, in terms of how many big hits those games had in the early years and how much staying power they've had over the years, like those are just the two, along with Pokemon, that are just the. Those are the ones that are gonna, even when everyone's mad at it, it's gonna sell well,
Right.
I mean, and like as far as just sheer quantity as well, there's I don't know, looking at other, if we're talking just Nintendo exclusives, like we always compare with other years of Nintendo exclusives and stuff, but if we're comparing still, like just comparing with Xbox and PlayStation exclusives in 2022, like sure, their Horizon Forbidden West is the hang your hat on it kind of a game, and
and God of War
and God of War,
too.
exactly,
Yeah.
same kind of thing. So like those, basically people kind of write off a lot of other things outside of exactly that kind of action adventure type thing.
They're the game that everybody is playing, like and I mean
Elden Ring earlier this year when it blew up. Yeah,
exactly. Oh, totally. Yeah. But I mean, but that said, I think there's just a lot of really good stuff this year, and it's good. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I honestly not to harp on this question too long, but like I feel like this is a sentiment I've been seeing a lot this year, where a lot of people have been saying like, oh, 2022 has been such a slow year for games, and it's like, what are you talking about? And it really, I think it ultimately comes down to the fact that like, if you're focused on just like the key tentpole biggest releases for each company, right? It's like, okay, sure, we're not seeing a new Zelda this year, we're not seeing a new Mario, we're not seeing a new, we are getting a new God of War. Like Sony's actually having probably the most for that, for what their biggest games are. But in terms of just the full breadth of titles and the kind of variety, and look, I'm a little biased. I like JRPGs, and this has been a really good year for those. So maybe that's where I'm coming from, of like, this year's so good. What are you talking about?
Right.
But I feel like, like what we're saying, right? We're not seeing all the like number one big zeitgeist moment, everyone's playing this, but we're seeing a lot of those like different fandoms finally getting fed on different things,
Yeah. And as far as like gearing up for something big next year, I think they're always trying to gear up for something big every year. So sure.
Right.
Breath of the Wild 2. It's happening next year, I hope.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
we'll see.
Last question from Twitter, and then a couple from Discord. But Let asks, Inkling or Octoling?
Inkling.
Inkling, because I love Splatoon.
Yeah. I'm gonna say Octoling because I've not played any Splatoon. So just to be contrarian, honestly.
I've always known that about you.
Yeah, that's what it is.
No,
all right, question for Discord.
If anything.
But Mechanzyme asked, Kevin did a video on the Backbone controller. Have you guys tried it? Kevin, have you tried it?
Yeah, have you tried it, Kevin?
I have tried it.
Look at that.
It's awesome.
Go for it.
No, you go for it.
I was going to say I've wanted to, but then every time I think about it, I'm like, am I going to use this? Because like in my head, it's like, oh man, I can play so much more Game Pass, because then it's the Switch situation. But at the same time, I'm like, do I want to do that? In the moments when I'm not playing games, do I want to give myself a reason to play games? Because I already play games a decent amount. So like the times when I'm not, do I want to give myself reasons to do it? You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
I get you. Yeah, you gotta have like off time, right? Like you gotta take a break. I'll 100% admit, like my main time of using it is when, like, basically if my wife Christine is watching something on the living room TV, and I'll just be like, well, I guess I'm just gonna stream play something on my phone with the Backbone, like, laying back on the couch. I mean, look, at the end of the day, playing natively on the system is always my main way to go. But if I have to stream play, or if I'm playing, that small handful of mobile game titles that benefit from controller that I want to play, it's by far my favorite way. It's like it's comfortable, and the biggest thing about it, I mean, I rant about all this in the video, is like the software support, like the way it actually, like I forget I'm using my phone sometimes because of how its app works and how you can easily just jump back and forth between, open the app, go into a game, hit the home button to go back to the app, and then like it feels like I'm using a handheld. It doesn't feel like I'm using a phone, which is cool.
I might have to do it.
Yeah.
And just use restraint.
Just keep your eyes open. It goes on sale every now and then. I know there was an Amazon Day sale.
I need to.
Is Game Pass on iOS at this point? I know at some point it wasn't.
Yes and no. It's like a web app sort of situation.
It's a web app situation, which does work though. Like, ultimately, even if you're not doing Game Pass, Stream Play still works because the kind of weird thing with Apple is that you have to own the device that you're remotely playing from, which is why Game Pass was an issue. So remote play from your system is a total supported thing on iOS. Game Pass streaming is like a weird web app situation.
Gotcha. I don't have a ton of use case for it just in the kinds of things I'm playing specifically, but I mean, along similar lines, I still have yet to get a Satisfy grip, and that's something that would very much come in handy for me. And I just haven't done it yet. But yeah, Backbone seems really neat if you're going to be playing anything on your phone, which I just don't. So there you go. Yeah. That's awesome.
They need to come out with the Android one. I'm not sure if what the timeline on that is. I know they've talked about doing it, but I think it's still only iPhone right now. So
gotcha. Yeah. Mark asks, salsa, guacamole, or queso?
Queso.
Oh, I mean, all those are delicious. If I have to pick one, I'm going to do salsa because I want I
freaking had spicy queso recently, and it changed my life. I was like, what? They do that?
Yeah, you can get spicy guac too. It's just put enough jalapenos in it.
I haven't had guac before. And I feel like I might not like it because I don't like the texture of avocados.
I'm in California. You can't avoid avocados and guac. It's everywhere. So
I don't love avocados for the most part. Guac, on the other hand, is great because it is a dip, whereas avocados are typically like a kind of buttery thing on things that aren't dip at all. So it just, it feels like a weird consistency compared to the other things that it's around for avocado specifically. But again, for guacamole, it's just like, it's just a regular dip, but it has all the... Exactly.
I'll try it. I'll give it a try.
Yeah. Nice.
I mean, the correct answer is all those things, but
exactly. I think I would pick salsa.
I already know I'm down for salsa and also queso. Guacamole, I haven't tried it because of the avocado thing, but I'll try it.
You should try
I'll throw in a quick creamy jalapeno from Chewy's as well. If anybody's had that, it's tasty. That's all. But yeah, salsa for sure wins. RP, similarly, Coke or Pepsi, Sprite or Sierra Mist, Mellow Yellow or Mountain Dew.
Who wants to go first? We'll just do.
Coke, Sprite, neither. I don't care. Coke or Pepsi, Sprite or Sierra Mist, Mellow Yellow or Mountain Dew.
Coke. I'm fine with either, but I guess 7-Up. Or did you say Sprite? I missed it.
Sprite
There
or
are so
Sierra
many
Mist.
lemon lime options.
I know.
And then Mountain Dew at the end.
Coke.
No Squirt? No support for Squirt?
Squirt is lemon lime too, right?
Had Squirt.
Grapefruit.
Grapefruit.
Oh,
I think it's grapefruit. Yeah, I mean, it's more tart for sure.
Coke, Sprite, Mountain Dew, but I don't like either one of those. I don't like freaking.
Yeah. I didn't go for either Mellow Yellow or Mountain Dew, but I will actually say I'm gonna run back a little bit. The
can
Coke
I say
or Pepsi.
Baja Blast for the Mountain Dew? That's Mountain Dew.
Sure, yeah. Baja Blast is good. Honestly, for Coke or Pepsi, I like both, and like I could tell the difference just a little bit. Like Pepsi feels a little more fruity or something like that.
It's a little more syrupy, right?
Yeah,
like a little more.
Yeah, I could see that. But I like them both, so I wouldn't necessarily say if you gave that I have a strong preference there. But Sprite or Sierra Mist, 100% Sprite. Like Sierra Mist always feels, I think it's like they're touting natural flavors these days, which is like fine, but something about it makes it feel like they didn't try as hard.
Sierra Mist
like, if I'm
seems
getting
too
Sprite,
sweet to
I'm
me.
getting...
It seems like super like sweet, whereas like
Tastes
Sprite
watered down
is
to
a
me.
little bit more on the like sour side, and I like that.
Yeah. Last one from Inda, who context. Australian. Washing up liquid or hand wash?
India's not Australian. They're
New Zealand.
No, they're not from. They're from the UK. Fake fan of our viewers, man. Fake
I
fan.
thought. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, Inda. I made a mistake. I definitely. No, well, it doesn't matter. Washing up liquid or hand wash?
What does this?
Neither.
What does this mean? What this means?
Yeah, I think those are both
is
words.
this like dishwasher versus hand wash?
Couldn't tell you.
Dishwasher sounds like liquid wash to me because it's just shooting hot water basically and running the whole cycle. I like hand wash, but sometimes I'm lazy.
Yeah, if we're talking about washing dishes, hand wash, man. The dishwasher is not great all the time.
Yeah.
That's where my brain went. There's terminology
Okay.
I'm missing here.
Well, we'll find out. And with that, that's all the questions. We ended out on a bit of a vague one, but that's all right. Kevin, thank you so much for coming. This has been super fun, and all your insights on Live Alive and everything just in general.
Thanks for having me. This is really fun. I like I'm used to doing videos where I'm just talking at the camera, but I actually have more fun talking with people. So
we're super down to have you on in the future if you would like to come back. You can find Kevin Kinson on his Twitter that's on the screen if you're watching the video version, or on his YouTube channel and all the other stuff that we will link in the description. Freaking, subscribe here, do all the podcast stuff. If you're, anchor.fm/DTY for all the podcast services. If you're watching on YouTube and you want to listen to it on your phone, you can rate us there, and it helps us with placement and whatnot. Thanks for listening with us, everybody. I hope you had a good time. I had a good time. It was fun. Good times all around.
I had a good time.
Okay.
Agreed.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Later.
Okay.